Hello everyone, we are the Lords of the Sith, and today we're going to talk about female characters in Star Wars, more specifically in the old canon. We're also going to discuss our favorite female characters. My name is Denise and I'm here with Lee.
Hello.
And with Mary.
Hi guys.
Okay, so we have to start with the queen. I know she's a princess, but she's the queen. Leia, so what can you guys say about her?
Where do we start with such an iconic heroine as Leia? I have to admit, I spoke about this in our last podcast. As a kid, I was always disappointed that Leia was never the one using the Force and with the lightsaber. I always wanted her up there with Luke, especially after that horrible retcon where it revealed that, she was his sister and let's not get into that.
Oh, I liked it. If they didn't do the retcon, she would need to end up with both of them. Okay, maybe.
That is true. But anyway, it wasn't until I was much older that I really, really began to appreciate who Leia was and what she represented. Because as a kid, I was never into feminine things. I was never into dresses. I was never into makeup. I always thought that was, stupid and weak. Girly things are stupid and weak, stuff like that. And then when I realized it wasn't, actually, it's quite empowering for women. Leia, what I love about Leia is what she represents. She's kick-ass. She's a great military leader. She's able to think quick on her feet. And she does this with such an, a feminine elegance. Mm-hmm. I love it. I love it, basically. What about you, Lee?
Yeah, I always liked Leia quite a bit, but I never thought that she had anything to do with me. I talked about this before. I never felt that because I was a girl, I had to identify with the girl character or want to be her. I've never wanted to be a princess unless it was a warrior princess. I love Zeta.
She is a warrior princess.
Any princess that actually used a sword and rode a horse and did the fighting things. Yeah, you guys are right. She is a warrior princess, but she's a rebel, and I don't care about that. I've never cared about the rebels or the resistance. I care about the Force plot. So if you're not a warrior in the Force plot, then, whatever. Stuff about, diplomats and wearing dresses and court appearances, that was never stuff that interested me. So I didn't think Leia had to be anything different than what she was. I was just more interested in the Jedi and the Sith. I thought she was cool. I really liked her. I thought she was funny. And it wasn't until I got older, kind of like you, Mary, in a way, that I appreciated how complex and how ahead of her time Leia was. Credit to George Lucas for that. Because if you think about it, she totally breaks the mold of what the gorgeous girl character is supposed to be, what you're expecting. You hear that these two dudes are going to go rescue a princess, and maybe you're expecting that she's going to be afraid and she's going to be like, oh my god, thank you so much for coming to my rescue. Let me give you a big kiss. I'm so grateful. But instead of that, she's like, aren't you a little short to be a stormtrooper? That was so funny.
And even before that, she's given both Tarkin and Vader, and she's in quite a precarious situation, as a prisoner, and she's giving them both smack.
Yeah, she always came across as strong. She wasn't going to be intimidated. But for me, it was more interesting to see her be tough on the good guys, too, because it's almost like you expect that she's going to put up a front, with the evil guys, but then with the good guys, she's not taking any bullshit from Han, who's here I'm, in charge here, sweetheart, and he keeps calling her sweetheart, and she is just not having it. I really liked that dynamic. Before I understood what was going on, I just really liked how she was very much an equal to them in their interactions. This character is awesome. I think that it had to do a lot with Carrie Fisher. It had to do with the way that Leia was written, and it's something really refreshing, and in a way it kind of made a mold for me. For all other women in Star Wars, I'm expecting that main characters who are women are going to be full of self-agency, empowered, and they're not going to be, lettuce female leads. Actually, recently I heard of a great podcast, and I just watched the first few minutes. Unfortunately, I didn't have time to watch all of it, but The Authentic Observer did a discussion on the attack on femininity, how masculinizing women isn't, making a case for empowered women. So it's very interesting ideas there. And the idea of a wet lettuce is supposed to be the antithesis of an empowered female, but then men who look like women but are really dudes is also not necessarily the answer to that. And Leia is neither of those things, so I really appreciate her for that more.
That's what I love, especially when she came out in that time where you did have, you know, those kind of like buffed up women who were very masculine in their approach.
I saw her first in Return of the Jedi. It's just so badass, just because usually most characters are one note, and she has all the notes in that movie. It's just the masked bounty hunter. Also Leia with a bikini. I think it's, for me, the fact that she takes her own chains and strangles her captor, how it speaks about female objectification and everything. And she also, even though she's fragile and she has that bikini, she kind of looks like a warrior, right? I mean, you think she's gonna be take a sword and go like Conan or whatever. And then she is fighting. She does fight in the forest. She's leading there in that movie. She's also the sweet princess with the dress. So I like it. And then she goes through all the motions. In the other movies that I watched later, I also like her. And one thing that's silly is that I liked that she's a brunette. It's silly because I think at that point most women were blonde and had blue eyes or green eyes. And she's a brunette, a short brunette, and which for me was really cool. I never thought, why doesn't she take a lightsaber? For me, it was obvious that after her conversation with Luke in Return of the Jedi, she was obviously going to be trained as a Jedi. I mean, I never had any question about it, and I guess I didn't read the EU, so for me, that was a reality that happened. But, you know, at least she was always fighting, so for me, it was really important.
Yeah, just going back to the bikini outfit, I know Carrie Fisher wasn't too happy with the objectification, but I think she also appreciated what it also represented, and that is the fact that, you know, you can be sexy and you don't have to be objectified, because as you said, she takes it into her own hands and strangles her captor, so that for me is like really empowering as well.
Yeah, but I also heard that she said that her outfits are boring, and it's interesting because up until then, the most revealing costume she wears is the one she wears at the end of the first one that has it doesn't even have cleavage, but it's a little bit. Other than that, she's covered from, you know, neck to toes, and then suddenly, wow, I can understand like the reaction. And what I thought it was that she was pretty and she looked really badass, and it was really nice.
Yeah, in terms of character, I also like her softer side as well. As I don't know why, but especially in the village in Return of the Jedi, when the Ewoks have her friends tied up, she doesn't get mad. She doesn't go, oh my god, you know, like she just calmly like tries to explain, these are my friends, please set them free. And also, you know, I love the conversation she has with Luke about finding out Vader is her father, and she can't tell Han, but she really wants to tell Han, and that just shows what, you know, what a deep, like, complex character she is. And that actually continued in Legends quite a bit. She it's interesting how the two are juxtaposed, about her character is in the sequel trilogy compared to Legends. We'll do the sequel trilogy for another time, but in Legends she does struggle with Darth Vader being her father, but there's actually a point in the story where she's able to forgive him, and that's like a personal journey for her, because she was just convinced that Vader was just this irredeemable monster and just doesn't understand why Luke could forgive him. But she's actually visited by his Force ghost, and he apologizes to her, and then later on she discovers Shmi's diary, which details, you know, like how sweet Anakin was as a kid, and learns, you know, to forgive him. And that's a big step, you know, like not just her character but any character, like finding forgiveness after what she endured.
Yeah, and that's a good point, and an interesting character arc. I just go back to, you said the Ewok village with Han. I didn't like Han with her up until that point, but at that point I really like it because he's jealous. He thinks he's losing her, and he still comforts her, and I thought it was a nice portrayal of a relationship. I don't know why people don't like it.
Mm-hmm. Some dude did a discussion, I think a few years back, talking about how Han is basically portrayed as a male chauvinist, and Leia is in a way a victim of him sexually harassing her, which I thought was ridiculous. I mean, I understand what he's saying, that definitely Han was like the more dominant one in the sense that he was one initiating the courtship, but it wasn't like Leia wasn't participating in it willingly, and maybe she likes that. That's the other thing. Like, he told her, you have a lot of nice men in your life, but what you like is a scoundrel, and she, he was right. That's exactly what she likes. Yeah. So I think a lot of interesting questions about, what it means to be a strong, independent woman come up when you think about Leia and her portrayal. One thing that's bothered me more and more about her character, and I think it's great actually, because she is like a real person in that way. She is really layered, and there's a lot of depth to how they build her. But one thing that I dislike about her is that she tends to compartmentalize a little bit too well. Just kind of navel-gazing stuff that I think about. Would Leia be okay with crying? I'd never, she doesn't cry. She lost her home world and her father and everything. And when she has to evacuate Hoth, their rebel base, she's like the last one to leave. Like, Han practically has to drag her out the door. And I wondered if she felt like she had to do that because she had to prove that, she could be a tough chick, So almost like putting herself in danger because she has so much more to prove. So I don't know. Those are things I wonder about. But then especially with the ST, how that affects her motherhood, like how that affected her relationship with Ben Solo. That is what I find most interesting about her character. And I don't know that we're going to get to see that explored much more. But for me, there's so many ways that they could have gone with Leia's characterization when we leave her at the end of the OT. And I don't know that this was exactly like the best, most flattering way to approach it. Just saying like, she either had to be a strong general or she had to be a mom, and she chose basically one over the other. But in a way, it is consistent with what we saw in the OT with her compartmentalizing and saying, I don't have time to cry because, we have to fight the Empire.
Can I ask, I've not read Bloodline. I know you guys have.
I haven't.
Oh, sorry, Denise. Lee, have you read Bloodline?
I did, yeah.
Does that ever come across in the book at all?
Yes, it does. She's under a lot of pressure, and she wants to basically ascend to be like the most powerful member of Senate, but then there's like a smear campaign directed against her. But she's just kind of keeping it all very separate because she's just got to see this through. And I think it comes across also in the movies, like in the new canon. What you said, Mary, about her arc in Legends, I thought that was fascinating. The fact that she got to forgive Vader, she got to understand him and see his humanity and forgive him and kind of resolve that conflict. She didn't get to do that in the new canon and the ST, and as a result, she projected all of her fears and her unresolved conflict and anger towards Darth Vader onto Ben Solo, and I think that is part of the reason why we have Kylo Ren today. I can't say that it's all her fault, but certainly there was a failure there on her part. So yeah, I think that's just the direction they decided to take her, and I think it's interesting.
Yeah, I never thought she was compartmentalizing. I thought she was very strong, just very, very strong. I mean, I don't think it's like, some heroes in movies do things that are humanly impossible, and to see her world being blown up and then just to go and comfort Luke, that's one of these things, and she's
that was always one of Carrie Fisher's biggest complaints, wasn't it?
She's like, she lost everything and she's comforting him. Well, but I find it like it's super strong,
Yeah,
like,
but if you think about it, Luke is portrayed out of the twins, he's the way more emotional one and sensitive one. The point I'm making is that her displaying some emotion wouldn't have made her any less strong, in my opinion.
Something I just wanted to go back with Han. Yes, he's masculine. But he also has this vulnerability, right? Their first kiss, they say she leaves, and he's like, "Oh, did I screw up?" And he also asks Luke, "Do you think what does he say? A girl like her and a guy like me, And Luke is like, "Nope." And I think it's not true that he's only this aggressive and predator, whatever people said it. Which I think makes sense with the character. So I thought it was okay. It was good.
Shall we move on to Padme?
Sure.
Yeah. So what about Padme? Leia said she was your favorite character in The Phantom Menace, right? So can you tell us a little bit about it?
Padme is actually my favorite female character in all of Star Wars. But Padme from The Phantom Menace specifically, I thought she was fantastic. And I think I saw her at just the right age because because I was in my teens when I first saw The Phantom Menace, in my early teens, and I just loved seeing Natalie Portman on screen and the character, just her representing it, you know, so well, like so empowered, so dignified, so feminine. And I love the pageantry of her girly freaking outfits, but at the same time, how powerful she is, you know, in her femininity, and how smart, how she, under pressure, she strategizes and she saves the day. You know, I just love that about her. And I expected so much from her. And then along comes Anakin, and she's like, oh my God, Anakin. Now she's reduced to just, you know, an Anakin apologist and covering for him, basically going along with whatever he says and betraying her own morals, all for Anakin's love. And of course she's doomed. And then, okay, I can understand that because she's a human being. She can make mistakes. But what I cannot forgive is her just dying of sadness when she's got two babies who are depending on her. Like, that was such a betrayal of her character. I just can't get over that.
Yeah.
So it's like, why did you do this, George Lucas? And I don't know if you guys are familiar with this at all, but I read that in one of the earlier drafts for Revenge of the Sith. Supposedly she was going to go to Mustafar to kill Anakin.
Yeah.
Did you guys see
There's
that?
concept art of that.
Yeah. Which I could totally see Padme from The Phantom Menace, like, doing this and saying, okay, I love him, but if it's true that he's killing younglings and he's turned to the dark side, now he's doing, you know, the Emperor's bidding, then, you know, I have to take care of this. And she wouldn't just tell Obi-Wan where he is, because maybe she thinks that she can convince him, but maybe she's got a backup plan that if absolutely he's evil, I can't just set him loose on the galaxy. I got to take care of this. I love that idea. But, I can see why that maybe would have been too extreme, and he wants to keep the love story intact. But I just thought it was such a betrayal of her character.
But she wouldn't kill him, right? Anyways, which would have been, as far as I read, she would go with the knife, and then she decides not to kill him, and he would have let her kill him, but she can't, which is kind of awesome in a way.
That's good. I would have preferred that, whatever. But her just like getting choked and then dying of sadness. What? It doesn't make any sense.
I go on, Denise.
I'm just gonna say I do not accept that she died of sadness. I think there was something, it's just that I guess they're really bad and their doctors are really bad and they didn't know she died of something else. I do not accept that.
I love the theory that it was the Emperor who basically took her life energy and transferred it onto Anakin so that he could heal him.
That
would be really good if they'd gone with that. I mean, wow.
Yeah. Like something drained her life force and it was probably the Emperor. But this thing about she just feels depressed. Ooba, ooba. Like the droid. You remember the birthing scene? Maybe she could have died of childbirth, but why sadness? It doesn't make any sense. It's a terrible message too, because depression is a real thing. Depression is a real thing. So if they were going to make her become depressed and die, then maybe do it in a better way, not just like, she's dead, accept and move on.
I think, going back to what we said about her confronting Anakin on Mustafar with and wanting to kill him, that would have, because their romance was a tragedy, that would have really closed off the tragedy, I think, other than the fact that, she died of sadness. I think it would have been really quite something if, there was a moment where she tried to kill him and he would let her. She couldn't go through with it, and then maybe, Obi-Wan did appear, kind of like in the Revenge of the Sith, and that's what makes Anakin fly into a rage and Padme has no time to react. I think that would have been really tragic.
Oh, yeah. I think they kept it like this to make her completely innocent, because he really aggresses her to have this monstrosity of Anakin as Vader. And if she had come with a knife, to make her really innocent, I don't mind it. The fact that she came completely innocent and not believing what she saw. And she didn't see it, was like, I think it's fine, but yeah, dying of sadness was a little silly.
But you guys, he has a precedent of killing younglings before. Just because they were, sand people doesn't make it any less bad. He killed the women and the children too. Come on,
to be angry is to be human. Remember that?
Sure, okay. No, I just think that this person who was Padme in the second and the third installment of that trilogy is a completely different woman from the one that I saw in The Phantom Menace. So that's why I say she's my favorite character up to that point. After that, it's like, what happened to you, girlfriend? I don't know. But it's not good. It's not
What
good.
do you think of, I know you said you haven't seen a lot of episodes of the Clone Wars, but what do you think of her character in the Clone Wars?
Oh, I love her in the Clone Wars. I think that they did a really good job with what I saw. Like I said, I stopped watching it mostly because of Ahsoka, but I actually really like. One thing that really struck me about the Clone Wars is, I don't know if you guys remember the first episode where she appears.
Is that Senate Spy?
It's very.
Is that Senate Spy?
I don't remember the name of it, but she's gone basically to talk to Jabba the Hutt cousin who is plotting to steal. It's not an episode. It's the movie, the Clone Wars movie that they've stolen the little baby. Yeah. So, and it turned out that the person behind that plot was a relative of Jabba. So Padme goes to kind of like negotiate with to try to broker a deal, like in a senatorial, capacity, just with C-3PO, and she gets captured. So at the end of that episode, Anakin and Ahsoka are talking to Padme through, like a holo communication, and Padme and Anakin exchange a little wink kind of thing, and they have like this little moment of exchanging like husband-wife, communication. But everybody's there in the room, and Ahsoka's right there next to Anakin. And that really, I found that very unseemly. It's really interesting because I ship them both. I love Anakin and Padme together, in spite of everything I just said. But I thought it was so unseemly of them and so gross of them to basically have this duplicity, betraying everything that Anakin is supposed to be doing, and the trust even of his Padawan, because he's supposed to be modeling behavior for her. So I thought that was the real tragedy of their romance, is that because they chose to be together in the wrong way, they chose to come together and still maintain this facade. That was like the rot, at the core, and that basically doomed them. I think it would have been much more noble if she had held him, her integrity and her nobility. She had held him to say, Anakin, if we want to be together, you have to leave the Order. Let's go. Let's leave all this behind. Why didn't they do it? The Padme from The Phantom Menace, I think, would have done that. I don't think she would have stood for this little charade, little theater that they had going on.
I think people go for the easy way. You're talking about the Clone Wars. There are lots of episodes of her, and she has episodes where there's one where she goes to the separatists, to separatist planet to see a friend who's separatist, and that's something that's wonderful. She goes with Ahsoka to meet her friend who's a woman. You have these things that maybe you can talk later. But Padme there, I think she's strong, she's kind, she's worried about the woman that works for her, that makes a low salary, and she also fights. She's really, really amazing. Again, I think they got a little bit of both, right? With the duplicity and with her smarts and everything. If you
think about it, Denise, I think the real interesting thing here is that we're looking at, you think about Padme in The Phantom Menace, she's like a virgin warrior, shielded with integrity and righteousness and justice and all these great things. And then comes Anakin, and he corrupts her in a way, now because of his love, and now that she's, a sexual being through her relationship with Anakin, that has, in a way, the way they're portraying it is that has introduced this duplicity and kind of this, basically polluted the fountain of her characterization, and now she's doing these sneaky things, and then she has to pay a price for it. So I think it's a really interesting commentary, and that's something that I personally, I don't want to get off topic too much, but I don't want to see that with Reylo. I don't want to see this girl character, who's empowered and virtuous, and because she's going to have sex, now she's corrupted and she's fallen from grace and she deserves to die. There's been with Padme, there's been a failure to integrate the virgin maiden Padme with the sexual feminine who becomes a mother and a wife in a healthy way. There's been a split there that's very interesting, and I don't want to see that happen to Rey, and I think that's what a lot of the Reylo haters are saying is going to happen. I don't see why that would have to be the case. I think we can talk more about like the heroine's journey and things like that when we cover Rey in the next discussion of female characters, when we cover the ST. But in regards to Padme, now because she's going to be a woman in a relationship with a man, now she's corrupted and then she has to end up being dead for it. So it's kind of like in the horror movies, like whoever has sex is going to die because they have to pay for being immoral. I think that there's something of that going on with Padme's characterization, but whatever. She's still my favorite. I don't care.
Going back to the episode of the Clone Wars that you mentioned, Denise, where she takes Ahsoka to see her friend Mina, if I remember that character was called. It's a great episode because because she takes it says a lot about her character, because she takes Ahsoka under her wing, basically, because Ahsoka just doesn't understand how politics works. So it says like a lot about her character, like how nurturing she is and how patient she is, which is why she's a senator, basically, because she is good at that. And also there's another episode from the Clone Wars called Senate Spy, where she reunites with an old boyfriend I should say, called Clovis, and Anakin is super jealous, but let's not go off topic. She she uses her wit to fool him into thinking that, she still has feelings for him and is willing to hear, what the Separatists have to say, when, of course, that's not true. She's just there to spy on him and discover, like, plans that Clovis has for the Separatists. And it just, again, shows, like, how good at planning she is and how good at preparing she is.
Yeah.
So, and, like, it just goes to, like, show, what a great leader from the Phantom Menace she is as well.
Absolutely. Since you mentioned this, in the episode where she goes to the Separatists, I find it funny that when she and Ahsoka come back, Anakin is furious with Ahsoka and he shows it, but he doesn't show it to Padme, because I think, he and Padme, they're more equals. He can kind of be, I don't know, so he can't really confront her. And as you mentioned, the Clovis, in the 7th season, there is a Clovis arc again where she meets him again, and I find it wonderful how they're portrayed, how their relationship was decaying into an abusive relationship, because Anakin starts getting aggressive and not so.
From what I remember, doesn't he leave her to rot in her prison cell essentially for a little bit?
No, he comes to pick her up. Well, that's the first. In the second Clovis, that's in the 7th season. He picks her up, but he's angry and he's starting to be a little weird. You see how the darkness is taking over him. We can see the beginning of an abusive relationship there, which I thought was really good, because it ends up as an abusive relationship, right? So
yeah, and that's something that I think a lot of people don't acknowledge, especially some of the younger people that I've talked to about Anidala. The fact that, for me, what seals the deal with Anakin is not so much even killing the younglings, it's actually choking Padme. Like, after that, there's no coming back for him. It wouldn't have been right for her to take him back after he did that. So that was like the bridge that, you can't uncross. After he choked her and nearly killed her, then, of course, he's lost basically to the dark side. He may be redeemed, but can a relationship be worked out of that? For me, no. The answer is no. But everybody's different, I guess. But Anakin was really heading down a dark path, and I think Padme was aware of that, and she just chose to basically be in denial about weird, shifty things that were going on with Anakin even before they got together fully. Again, that's just, I don't know, it just doesn't go in line with the Padme that I kind of loved in the Phantom Menace.
It kind of does show that love does blind us, though, I guess.
It can if you let it, I guess. I don't know. It would be good to know more if they had explored that maybe a little bit more, because for now, for me, it just comes across as inconsistent characterizations, from one movie to another.
Yeah.
I thought I like the prequels for what they want to do. I watch it and kind of like try to ignore the dialogue and everything and try to get what they're trying to do. But what I find is that her tragedy is Anakin, and it is Anakin that, not because Anakin is evil or whatever, that turns her into this lettuce, right? Mm-hmm. That somehow the only thing that I don't really like is that I don't understand why she was into him. That scene when they're coming out and she confesses her love and he looks at her like, what? I make the same face. I'm like, what? But yeah, I think it's true.
I actually understand, because I think Hayden Christensen is so gorgeous,
but with that hair, with that little braid, I think he's ugly in that movie. I'm sorry.
Yeah, the haircut's not the best there, definitely
flattering look for him. But I think also just the intensity of him, and I think there's happened to me certainly in real life. Sometimes you like somebody more initially because of how they like you.
Yeah.
So I think that his single-mindedness in pursuing her, and then how maybe if she hadn't had a chance to really talk to a guy like that in private, because of her senatorial and queenly duties. And so, yeah, it is, now that I think about it, it is weird. But I guess for me, watching that as a 13-year-old or whatever, I understood it. I would have liked Anakin too. I thought it was incredibly romantic. It's really funny. I thought that Padme was so brave for marrying him, in secret, and even like grabbing his metallic hand. I thought that was so her, like, he's not perfect anymore, and she still loves him. So it was just interesting how, as a teenager, I perceived that in a different way than I do now. But yeah, it's weird. I don't think they have like amazing chemistry the way that the Reylo people do, for example. But so in a way, it's like the story expected that they would fall in love, and we just kind of go along with it.
You see, I think, this is just me, I think Hayden Christensen and Natalie Portman do have chemistry. They really do. It's just the script and the directing really, really put a damper on it, in my opinion.
Honestly, for me, they have chemistry, but it's not like out of this world amazing chemistry like Adam Driver and Daisy Ridley. I think that the dialogue was just awful, and
oh, come on. we have some of the most memorable lines in movie
I don't
history.
like sand.
I hate sand. I don't like sand.
Oh my god.
But you know what? You know the scene in the fireplace? I actually like that scene, and I actually like Hayden Christensen's acting. It's like the dorky, weird, shy guy, you know, like if you think about it,
but
which I like it.
Funny to me how, because they're telling you in a way that she really is into him. Why would you dress up like a dominatrix, you know, and sit by the fireplace with this guy that you know he's just so in love with you and he's obsessed with you, and you just like, okay, that's the outfit you want to wear to say no to him? I mean, she was obviously sending him mixed messages.
Poor guy.
So, moving on from Padme, is there any other character you want to mention in Clone Wars? To be honest, I've not really watched a lot of the Clone Wars.
Come on.
I haven't. I like Assaj Ventress, but Assaj Ventress, the one I like is kind of like different from the one in the Clone Wars. I like the one from Legends, like a Legends continuity.
Okay.
She was kind of like way more kind of just like darker, and I think she was a bit more aggressive, especially like in her hatred towards the Jedi. Essentially, like in the Disney canon, I think we kind of like see her move away from the ideology of the Sith and kind of like go on her own path before meeting Quinlan Vos and falling in love with him. But no, in Legends, she really, really hates the Jedi. It's kind of like sad in a way, because she was always like portrayed as this broken character who's just her life was always tragic, because her parents died on her home planet, and then when her Jedi master discovered her, he was also killed. She kind of just like blamed the Jedi for his death, from what I remember correctly. So it just kind of like shows this tragic character who's just broken by her own hate, can't escape it. She just can't escape it, which is it's so tragic. But she also had a really, really like interesting connection with Obi-Wan
In Legends as well?
in Legends.
Because I know in the Clone Wars they flirt all the time, which I love,
That's
by
so
the way.
cool.
But
Yeah, I love it too.
Yeah.
what do they do in Legends?
Yeah, they definitely flirt. I think it's a bit more on the nose in Legends. In fact, I'm going to confess, like, I know Obi-Wan has Satine and Assaj has Quinlan Vos in canon, but to be honest, I'm really sad that they didn't take... I know they flirt in the Clone Wars, but I'm really sad they didn't take more advantage of that and actually, like, made them kind of end up together, or, like, at least in love in their own way, kind of like a Batman and Catwoman thing. But anyway, from what I remember, like, he's, like, the only one convinced that she can be redeemed. Nobody else believes that. Anakin especially, like, really wants to kill her in Legends, and Obi-Wan refuses. And now I can't remember correctly, but he kind of like says, oh, she's dead, but kind of like he knows she's alive, and kind of like lets her go her own way. And she does. When after their final battle, I think she finally manages to escape her hatred by just leaving the Clone Wars altogether and going somewhere far away. And it's a shame, because we never really like discovered what happened to that Assaj Ventress.
Oh, yeah, I love the Assaj in the Clone Wars, because that's one thing, like, when I see her flirting with Obi-Wan, she's this woman, she's this bald woman that is, unique looking, and, she has this femininity as well. By the way, I was watching a YouTube video of the scene, and I read some comments, which I thought were fantastic. They're saying, oh, I would love to see Angelina Jolie as Assaj Ventress, and someone said, no, Charlize Theron, and somebody said, no, Eva Green. And I thought it was amazing, because I think she's beautiful, but I'm a woman. To see guys recognize that she can be beautiful even though she's aggressive and she's bold and everything, I thought it was really cool. And I don't don't think she's that complex. I think she's like a one-dimensional mustache thriller villain without a mustache for the beginning. But I do like her arc, and it's just really neat to see, like a badass woman. And for the Clone Wars, I also liked how we saw, women interacting with women, and you had like Ahsoka and Ayla Secura, you have Padme and Ahsoka and Barris, and you have a lot of interactions like this, which I really enjoyed.
That's one thing that the movies are like seriously lacking in is not just like, I like the fact that we at least saw one scene between Leia and Holdo in the sequel trilogy that just doesn't have like a cat fight between women, because it's, you don't really see that in blockbusters often, so it was nice to have that. But yeah, it's nice to see it in the expanded universe as well. Ahsoka and Padme, like you just mentioned, and the others. And we also saw it in Legends as well. Leia had her handmaiden Winter, and then of course you had it between Leia and Mara, like two powerful women who respected each other. Just like there was just a lot of female friendships, which I liked, and I'm hoping we'll at least see it between Rey and Rose, or maybe like Rey, Rose, and Naomi Aki's character in episode 9.
I agree, definitely. So does anybody want to talk a little bit about Ahsoka?
Yeah, Ahsoka. I thought it was really great that for the Clone Wars, she is the point of view character, she's the viewer coming into this world and learning about it. And the fact that she's a girl and she has dark skin, and even though she's an alien, she's not human and stuff, I think it's really cool. And I think she's fine. You said you don't like her. Why do you dislike her?
No, I like her now. I mean, I didn't like her in the Clone Wars. I actually stopped watching the Clone Wars because I thought that she would continue being as obnoxious as she was in the first few episodes that she appeared. I don't know, the first few appearances of Ahsoka, she was like brash, cocky, arrogant, disrespectful of Anakin, and I'm like, what's up with this chick?
But that's exactly how Anakin is with Obi-Wan, in a way.
I know,
so he's
but
tasting his own medicine.
With Anakin, I know Anakin, and I love Anakin, but I don't know Ahsoka. I don't know her from Adam, and all of a sudden she's like here, like talking back to her teacher. What? I don't know her, so I just kind of like I got kind of turned off by her attitude, and I just didn't want to have anything to do with her, so I stopped watching the Clone Wars. But then I saw her as a grown-up, as a more mature, Ahsoka in Rebels, and I absolutely loved her. I really loved her, even though she wasn't in it that much. I just really enjoyed her, and it made me, oh my god, that duel with Vader, oh my god, that just made me, the relationship between them, the portrayal of that kind of conflict between them, and obviously how much she still loved Anakin. It just really made me want to know her more and kind of go back and watch the Clone Wars. But then I thought, they're never going to bring it back, and I have other things to do, so I put that on the back burner. Now that they're bringing it back, I am definitely going to restart, rewatch it again and pick up where I left off. I'm just curious to see how I'll react. It seems like she does become less obnoxious over time in the Clone Wars, am I right? So
I never thought she was obnoxious. I think the idea is that she's this mini-Anakin, and that he got, it's not like Obi-Wan saying, how is it like to deal with an Anakin, and I don't know, sometimes I actually find that what annoys people is that she's a girl talking back. I don't know. I don't think that's the case with you, but
not that she's a girl talking back. I certainly have a smart mouth of my very own, but she's not the chosen one. If it were a boy, I'd be just as annoyed. We don't know her. She knows nothing, and yet she thinks she's right all the time, and it's her way or the highway. I just find characters like that annoying if they don't have anything to back that up with. Anakin is arrogant, and I really like that about him because he has something to back that up with. I like people who are confident and self-assured, but you got to actually have, something to deliver. And I just didn't see anything that Ahsoka offered except her brash attitude. So I just really was turned off by her big time. But, this idea of her being like the mini-Anakin and Anakin having to deal with a mini-Anakin, I think it's adorable. And I really like, what I saw of them in Rebels. And I really am looking forward to seeing that in Clone Wars. So
yeah. She goes really attached to Anakin, which is kind of interesting.
I'm really looking forward to seeing that. When I watched their interactions in Rebels without context, I was kind of shipping them a little bit. But then when I talked to other people and I went online, I found out the mentorship relationship that they had in in the Clone Wars, it really sounds like she's more of a sister to him, like a little sister. So I actually find that even more interesting. And therefore, I don't know, I'm excited about it. I just want to check her out more.
Yeah, I was gonna say, it's just because you said that, I really like that they have like this loving relationship that's not romantic, which is super cool.
Yeah. Well, as I said, I don't know much about Ahsoka. I really do need to start watching the Clone Wars now that it's coming back. But I like what Ahsoka represents for like women and little girls, because she is, you know, for little girls now, along with Rey, what Mara was for me growing up. And I'll get to Mara later, but what I like about Ahsoka is the fact that she's not, since she's not human, she's not a particular skin color, she's not white, she's not black, she's not Hispanic, you know, she's not Asian. And in some ways, her being an alien means that, you know, in that sense, we can all perhaps see ourselves in her without having to worry about our ethnic identity. I just also like what she represents for the little girls, that you can be, you know, a woman, you can still be feminine, because I'm gonna be honest, I do love her outfits, and I love how her outfits kind of like change and get more mature as she grows older. It's just what she represents for young girls now.
One thing I'll note is that, and I'm not sure I'm the only one who noticed, I think the Ahsoka in Rebels looks whiter than she looked before. I don't mean white as a lighter skinned, and yeah, I don't like it.
I've got to be honest, I don't like her redesign in Rebels. I don't like her Leku. I don't like how the way her Leku is designed. I preferred it in the Clone Wars.
Aw, I liked her in Rebels. What are you guys talking about?
Her outfit was pretty cool.
I'm kidding.
She looks like a warrior in that.
I didn't really watch much of her in Clone Wars, so I didn't really even notice much of a difference, to be honest with you. But I'll rewatch it and maybe I'll notice as well. I agree with you 100%, Mary, what you're saying about what she represents to little girls, because the little girls that I've talked to in real life who are Star Wars fans, they all love Ahsoka, and that's how they got into Star Wars, was because of Ahsoka. So I think that is so important, you know, and for me, I think Rey also is likable for little girls in a way, but I don't know, I just think Ahsoka is cooler in my opinion, so sorry, but...
Yeah, I guess it comes, I mean, like I said, I've not watched it, but I know, because everyone knows that Ahsoka goes through quite a complex character arc and goes through quite a lot of character development. Like, her loyalty to the Jedi Order is tested quite severely. And so, I think that's the reason why a lot of people also love her, is because of that character development. She goes from that obnoxious, back-talking Padawan to maturing into a conflicted young woman. And I think that's also, like, so important for growing up and maturing and finding your place in the world, because she leaves the Jedi Order to find her place in the world, and that again speaks to so many people.
And I think that's really important, that, you know, she left when she saw that things were really kind of broken down and it wasn't what she believed in. It wasn't, she just couldn't stay, right? It was like a betrayal of her, it would have been a betrayal of her morals to stay, is my understanding, although I haven't seen it. Is that correct?
No, it's because they were really horrible to her, and she thinks, yeah.
I mean, they had accused her for something she didn't do.
Yeah.
And then she just felt like if they can't believe in me, I can't believe in them, right?
Yeah.
That was it. So it was basically, even though she's still a good guy, you know, we're assuming, she leaves. I think that's a really important thing too in her arc, and as a young woman, you know, as a character who's becoming an adult, to follow your own moral compass. That's what heroes do. So, and I really like, you guys have heard me talk about this before, for me personally, I love that idea about just because, you know, you are on the right side doesn't mean that you're right. Just because you're aligned with the good guys doesn't mean that they're always right. So I really like when arcs expose that, the fact that the Jedi are good, but they're not good all the time. They do bad, messed up stuff too, and they mistreat people. And I think that she really called them out on their hypocrisy in a way by leaving. So I really like that about her, and I'm looking forward to rewatching the Clone Wars. Maybe we can do a little discussion on Clone Wars once
definitely.
we've all watched it. Yeah. I wanted to talk about Rebels. I don't know if you guys have watched it all.
I watched the first season and then I stopped because I thought it was boring. I'm sorry.
Yeah, you know, I actually had that stop and start too. I tried to watch it at first and then I was like, whatever. But then I watched the whole thing and I fell in love with it in the second season. I think the first season is by far the weakest one, and you can see over time how things get more cohesive with the storytelling and they get more complex, because in the beginning a lot of these episodes were like really basic storytelling. But then when you start to see the characters develop and you start to see the bigger picture that they're a part of, so it's not, because the first they started to establish each character and every character had an episode, and then it was more like, okay, here's how these people fit into the bigger picture. That's when things started to get really interesting. And by the end of it, I have to tell you, I'm super impressed. Some of those lightsaber duels in Rebels rival like the movie lightsaber duels for me. You just get goosebumps watching that. It's like, whoa, like it's amazing. And the animation improved as well. So I think really it comes together. So you really have to give it a chance because you're missing out otherwise. It's really worth watching. You know, my favorite character in Rebels is actually Sabine Wren, and she's a Mandalorian girl. And I love how they portrayed Sabine as a young woman, and also just as a super cool character. You know, she's super smart. She's a genius, and she's an artist, and she's a warrior. Has a lot of trust issues. She was actually training, you know, for the Empire. She was part of the academy, and she dropped out. And it's just really a beautiful story arc for a character. And then she has these issues with her family. You know, then she gets to reconnect with them, and she gets to actually, if she wanted to, she can be the leader of the Mandalorians, but she decides, you know, that's not for me. So I love how they explored her character arc in Rebels, and she's actually probably my second favorite after Padme of all the female characters in Star Wars. And I was hoping so much that they would do, because at the end of Rebels, I don't know if you guys want to hear this or not, but
yeah, go ahead.
She actually reconnects with Ahsoka, and it sounds like they might go looking for Ezra Bridger, who's really the main character of Rebels. So I was so hoping that, you know, in the future they'll develop them more and maybe do like a sequel, you know, like a new series. So that would be fantastic. But yeah, I really like how Rebels portrayed women, because of course there was Hera Syndulla, who is I always think of her as the mom figure of Rebels, and how she is such, you know, she's such a talented and capable soldier. Basically, she's like the best pilot
Thrawn.
after Anakin, I think, and she is so good that even the villains admire her. You know, like Thrawn has such a crush on her as a woman, although that would have been interesting too if he did, but that's not what they explored. But like he has such a crush on her as an adversary. He's like, you know, oh, it must be Hera Syndulla, it must be Captain Syndulla. You know, it's so interesting. I really like how they portrayed her, and then also she is tough, you know, but she is sensitive. She cries. She suffers. You know, she's afraid. It's a real character. It's a real person. I really, really enjoyed Rebels for that aspect of it.
Yeah. What about you? Did you watch Rebels, Mary?
I only watched like a couple, quite a bit of season 3 of Rebels because Thrawn was coming back, and I was like super excited. But going back to what you mentioned about like Thrawn having a crush on Hera, I'll just briefly mention this because it was going a bit off topic. But I would have really loved it if they had explored that kind of like side of Thrawn and Hera, like maybe him having an actual romantic crush on her as a woman. Because again, even if they hadn't explored it, like what you actually saw in Rebels was he admired her for, you know, her talents. He admired her as a leader. He admired her as a pilot. He admired her strong will and courage, and I really, really loved that. It says a lot about her character, and he was just like totally respective of it. And it's kind of like Reylo in a little way, except a bit different, because never once is Kylo threatened by Rey's gender or her power, and it's the same thing here. Thrawn is never threatened by Hera's strong will or her gender. He just, you know, he loves that about her, and I really wish they'd explored that a little bit deeper in a romantic sense on his part, because I think that was a really big missed opportunity there.
Yeah, I think that they were in a way telling you, if you wanted to be, he couldn't have a crush on her, because he was so fascinated by her background too. You know, like he had this like tapestry, and like he was in her family home, and he had her little like heirloom object, whatever. So, and he was fascinated by that aspect of it too. Thrawn actually admired Sabine Wren in much the same way, but it just felt a little bit less personal than it did with Hera. Maybe I'm just kind of, you know, projecting, but I just thought that because he when he talked about one time, they were talking about some kind of a design or something, and he said, oh, this must be Sabine Wren. Like he knew only she she could be as smart, and as a competent as an engineer to be able to pull something like that off. So I really like that about Thrawn, incidentally. I think that it's a really nice, it speaks very nicely to his character design that he's able to admire these women in that way. I think in many ways, he underestimated the male characters more, but he definitely admired these strong women.
Yeah.
That's nice.
Going back to Hera just a bit though, the episodes that I really enjoyed were the, aside from being with Thrawn, that is, was her interactions with her father. And I think maybe you remember it a bit more, Lee. I can't remember exactly what the conflict with her father was. Was it the fact that he wouldn't fight the Empire?
No, he was an extremist, her father. Like, he was obsessed with, he was a little bit cut out like Saw Gerrera. Didn't care how many lives were lost in the process. Like, he just wanted, he basically had this idea that the ends would justify any means that he had to use. So she's not like that, And also, I think that he was just so focused on the cause that Hera didn't really feel like she mattered to him all that much. So she was just felt kind of disconnected from him in that way too.
Okay, so now there's one more character, Mara Jade, and Mary, I think you can talk a lot about her. I don't know anything about her. I always thought that it was just the idea to give Luke a hot girlfriend. Yeah, I don't know.
Guys, you really need to read the Thrawn trilogy. Seriously, we need to do an episode on it one day, but that is so good, and just Mara herself is just so good. And I found Mara for the first time. It was just, I can't even describe the feeling, because I finally found a female character who was using the Force and using the lightsaber the same way the guys were. So that in itself was just like a big thing. And even though girls now have Ahsoka and Rey, I find it very sad because Mara was the first one of those women, I think even before Leia even like picked up a lightsaber. So it is a shame that Lucasfilm aren't bringing her back, because girls, will now not experience her character the same way I and other, fans of Legends experience that character. But anyway, aside from that, there's quite a few things I love about a character. One is the fact that Timothy Zahn, I really enjoyed like how he wrote her, because I think he originally said in an interview that when writing female characters, or female warriors for that respect, there's a line where her femininity is kind of like lost. People find it hard to write a woman warrior and an angry woman and still keep her femininity. Mara still keeps her feminine side, which I think is great. She's a beautiful woman. She wears that black catsuit, and I know maybe a few people have thought the black catsuit is over-sexualized. I don't think it is. I think it adds to her femininity a lot, because she's very confident in herself, uses her sexuality with the utmost confidence. So it's really great.
I think that you raised a very interesting point, Mary. I mean, it's like Mara Jade is a freaking gorgeous woman. So why wouldn't she use that as a weapon just as much as a lightsaber or her blaster, She's a spy or whatever, right? Isn't she like...
Yeah, she's an assassin for Palpatine.
Yeah, so, and it's not wrong for women to use their sexual power to meet their ends. Why is that bad? I guess it would be bad if it were the only weapon that she had to use, right? But she has an arsenal. So what's wrong about it? In the same way, men do it too. It's not just women that use, their charms. Men do it too. So I don't know. I'm always kind of puzzled by that. The fact that, it's a catsuit, it's wrong, it's reducing her. It's not. If her character were just about her curves and her catsuit, that would be one thing. But obviously she's a very complex person, right?
Yeah, like for example in the Thrawn trilogy, I know I'm going to be spoiling it, you guys, but her character is going through kind of like a loss of identity, because she was given to the Emperor at the very early age, and he basically raised her and trained her to be his own personal assassin. So he's basically her father figure, and serving him is all she's known. And then suddenly that's taken away with the Emperor's death, and she feels like it was taken away by Luke Skywalker. And in some ways it was, although not in the way she believes. But she absolutely hates Luke for like destroying her life, because like I said, it's the only thing she's ever known. So she's just really angry, really lost person in the Thrawn trilogy, just trying to find, her own way. You could even compare it to like a young woman who's kind of been oppressed all her life. She's only known one thing, and it being expected of this one thing by a man in this case. And then when all of a sudden that male figure is no longer there, she's able to go out into the world on her own. But at the same time, while you could argue that it's like a newfound freedom, she has no idea what to do, because she's only known one thing. So she's very angry, especially at Luke, and wants to kill him. But before she even meets Luke, she becomes a smuggler for a dude named Talon Card, and it's like through him and through a series of other events that she comes across Luke. Now Luke, this is why I love their relationship so much, because, you know, she obviously finds out from him and through other people as well that Vader was the one who killed Palpatine to protect his son. Now what she initially believed is she believed that Vader and Luke just ganged up on Palpatine, and, you know, Vader had no loyalty essentially, but that wasn't true. And then she finds out about, you know, all the horrible deeds that Palpatine did, that he wasn't exactly truthful with her, that she wasn't the only Emperor's hand, ha ha ha, and kind of like all the horrible stuff that the Empire did. So on top of like a loss of identity, she's also finding out all the stuff that the Empire did and is like questioning her loyalty. You know, like she's kind of like, did I really work for a corrupt, you know, government essentially, when she initially believed that the Empire was you know, like a wonderful place, you know, like and she was keeping the peace. So again, she has to struggle with that. That's what just like all these kind of like layers just make Mara such a fascinating character for me. And also her relationship with Luke Skywalker as it goes, you know, as she figures out what the Empire was, and like her initial beliefs or perceptions of him weren't true at all and were totally different. It's amazing to watch, and it's why I think she's the most complex and best female character in Star Wars.
Well, it's very interesting. You know, we were talking in the casting discussion about the possibility of them repurposing Mara Jade and having a Mara Jade-like character that's not really her, who's not going to be Luke's love interest, but somebody like that. I think that would be cool, and I think there's room for more going forward. Maybe somebody who's a Knight of Ren, or maybe somebody who was like Snoke's, you know, secret apprentice or whatever. I think that would be awesome if we got to see that, because it sounds like there's a lot there, you know, a lot of layers to that character.
There is. And I'll say for this, you know, like Luke had a lot of love interests in the EU, but they were all like written for him. It was like Luke first, character second. For Mara, I think even though there's like conflicting reports on whether she was originally written to be Luke's love interest from the start, because it was like a 10-year period between the characters and the publishing of the books before they actually officially got together. With Mara, it's character first, Luke second, and that continues throughout Legends. It's just, again, it shows, you know, how important this character was for the fans to love, but also for the authors to get right as a woman and not just be taken over as the man's love interest, so
Can
to
I
speak.
ask you, and this spoiling it, I guess, but how is it that she comes to be killed by her nephew? Like, was she really sacrificing him? Like, did she let him kill her, or was she bested in combat?
No, she found out that Jason was manipulating her son for years, and so she goes all mama bear on him. But it's a dirty fight. Jason, Mara could have wiped the floor with him, but Jason like sneakily used his poison to like slow her down before killing her. She even like says to him, "Wow, you're just like Palpatine now."
Wow.
So yeah,
she sounds really cool, and I'm gonna say I wish Luke had a love interest to complete his arc, you know, like, because people in these type of stories usually have love interests. It just sounds like a very good love interest for Luke, because she's this really good character.
Even Mark Hamill has heard of her and loves her character. I think that says a lot, you know, when the actual actor likes the character and also is like jealous that, you know, he never got to play against her in the actual movies.
Yeah. Okay, so this was it for today. We're going to talk a little bit more about the new canon. For now, I really want to thank everybody who left such nice reviews on our iTunes. It was really cool, and ratings, and everybody who's been following us and leaving wonderful comments on Twitter, Tumblr, SoundCloud, Facebook, and it's been really wonderful. Thank you all for all your support. You're all amazing, and may the force serve you all.